Hey, this is Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the coach. Our question today comes from a fellow with a name written in Japanese, and since I cannot read katakana or kanji or any of the other Japanese writing systems except for Romanji, which is the Roman alphabet, spelling out Japanese words, I don't know what this says. But our Japanese friend says this: Hey Ramsey, I have a somewhat dangerous question. If someone really wanted to, could they train to be able to fight and win against a lot of opponents, roughly around 12 to 30 average people, with no martial arts background? Man, this sounds like a 1990s video game, like Double Dragon or Final Fight. Are we talking about like one at a time or two at a time, or all 30 at once? Because, man, that's just nuts, man. But our Japanese friend goes on to say, is it physically possible to be able to do something like this without gassing out? And if this is possible, what kind of training would have to be done to be able to do so? If this isn't possible, then what would be the number of opponents someone who trained for could take on? Also, if you could take on multiple opponents, how many people do you think you can take on? All right, man. So the answer to your question depends largely, are we talking about 30 people at once? Because that's ridiculous. Even if you're fighting 30 wimps at once and you are some UFC champion, you're probably going to die in that situation. Because 30 bodies on top of you, man, if zombie movies have taught me anything, slow-moving zombies in numbers, piled on top of you, that's a ton of flesh and bone and teeth chomping down on you. And you just cannot support that kind of weight alone, okay? So 10 to 30 people attacking you at once, unarmed? No, that's not going to work. If you have a weapon of some kind, yeah, that's going to change the situation quite a bit. If you have an efficient and powerful weapon, absolutely, sure. But if you mean, if you're going to fight 10 to 30 people one at a time, maybe tournament style, maybe kumite style, like if you're going to do a 30-man kumite. If you're not familiar with that term kumite, well, you have a Japanese name, you should. It's sparring in Japanese. It's the sparring of karate. So some karate schools will hold an event they call a kumite or sparring, and they will have a certain number of black belts go one by one against another black belt. Sometimes it is a rite of passage for belt promotion or something like that, or just for personal development. For example, if you look up 100-man kumite, you can see a few people have accomplished this. A few high-level Kyokushin karate black belts have accomplished this feat. In other words, they fight 100 3-minute karate fights, one after the other, full contact. They're allowed to punch the body, not the head. They can kick the body, the legs, or the head, and they just keep going. And you can watch a few of these in their entirety, and it's quite interesting to see these dudes. Every time a fresh opponent comes in, I think the guy gets a short break, a very short break in between each fight. And he does it 100 times. So it is 300 minutes of straight fighting. And by the end, these guys can barely lift up their arms. They're not throwing any punches. They're just absorbing damage like a punching bag. It is an absurd feat of will, stubborn will. So is it possible to do that? I mean, yeah, people have done that. You can watch that here on YouTube. Now, if we take away the rules, okay, and instead of having karate, maybe make it MMA or no rules at all, that'll change things. I mean, I suppose it's possible if you have a really tough trained guy and you have a fresh, untrained fighter come in one after the other. I mean, I've done that sort of thing in the gym. I do that all the time. You know, I spar with my students one after the other, no breaks. Do 10, 20 rounds in a row. That's not a big deal, okay? But at the same time, if you take away the safety precautions, like all the safety precautions, and instead of friendly sparring, suddenly it becomes a fight with bad intentions. This gets different. Gets different really quick. Because even a schmuck, once in a while, is going to land a shot on you. And if that shot has bad intentions behind it, and it clips you on the chin or gets you in the eye, or some other sensitive place, it is going to make you perform differently than you otherwise would have. It may put you out of your element. And then let's say 2 fights in, you take another one. Maybe you end up blind in one eye. Maybe that guy bites you, bites your fingers off or something, or headbutts you purposefully or accidentally when you weren't expecting it. And that can put you in a discombobulated state you weren't expecting to be in. So anything can happen in a fight. Everybody has a puncher's chance, if you will, in a fight. Anybody can lose their composure in a fight on any given day. Take the greatest fighter in the world, and it is possible for him to make mistakes, especially if he's fighting 30 guys in a row. Now, as far as fighting multiple opponents, the other day at the gym, there were a bunch of new guys there for a grappling class I was teaching. I wanted to do some rolling, and only 2 of them wanted to roll. Everybody else was wimping out like, that's hard. We don't want to do it. We're new. And so I said, all right, all of you against me. Let's give you guys a fighting chance. And even then, only 2 of them had the guts to take me up on it. So I grappled both of these guys. The studs that they are, they've only been training for a couple of months. But they got on the mat with me. And we grappled 2 against 1. And yeah, it was pretty awesome. It was a great exercise for me. And I think they learned a lot from it as well. And yeah, man. If you added a 3rd or a 4th or a 5th, man, that would be so difficult. It is very difficult to control 2 people. I did manage to pin them both at one point, hold one in my guard while I managed to fight the other with my upper body at another point, and I did manage to tap them both out at the end. But man, that was tough. My student Andrew, or Dewey Parker, you've seen him on my podcast twice. If you watch my podcast, go check that out on my podcast playlist on my channel, the Ramsey Dewey podcast, with Dewey Parker, the first one that we did, not the second. And yeah, man, Andrew did this thing I'd never seen anybody do at the gym before. We did sparring, grappling against multiple opponents, and he took on 6 guys at once, and he tapped them all out. So the rule was, if you tap, you're out. You have to go sit down. Because what's a tap in real life? A tap is, you got me, I'm dead. You killed me. So you go sit down, right? So one after the other, he tapped out all 6 of these guys, which shocked me, because that's something I've never been able to do. And in a one-on-one match, I can tap out Andrew most of the time. And I saw him do something that I had never been able to do, and it was shocking. It was like, wow, that is so interesting. So counting anybody out is kind of foolish when you haven't seen what they're able to do. But yeah, man, how many opponents could I take on in a one man after another Kumite style matchup? I don't know. I've tried a few of those. And the thing is, I tend to run out of fresh opponents before I run out of the willingness to keep going. On my 40th birthday, I asked my students for a gift, and that gift was to do a 2-hour sparring session where I would stay in the middle, no breaks, and a fresh opponent would come in each time. So we went for 2 hours, and it was fantastic. One of the best 40th birthdays ever. So, yeah, man. But if those were real fights, not just friendly sparring sessions at the gym, friendly where we're trying to strangle each other, friendly. We're trying to punch each other in the face, but without the bad intentions of trying to kill that other person, you know? That's a different story. Because even a seemingly small thing like a jab can turn the tide very quickly. So exercise a great deal of caution anytime you entertain the idea of multiple opponents. And if you don't have a good reason to be fighting multiple opponents, turn the other way, get out of there. Thanks for watching. Now get out there and train.